Good
All
morning.
right. I think it's
Top
8
of the
o'clock.
hour. Yeah, it's top of the hour, and this
Okay.
morning we'll be having the third session in our 4 week series on research ethics. And this morning, Dr. Witere will be taking us on a very important topic, which many researchers, especially the early career researchers, often have difficulty or challenges with, which is authorship, publication, and avoiding misconduct. Dr. Witere is an integrity trainer and an ethicist. She's passionate about it, and I'm sure by the time you listen to her, you're going to have a lot of key messages to take home from the discussion. Dr. Guterres, over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lawal. Good morning, everybody. Well, I've been introduced already. I'm not going to waste so much time with that, but I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the organizers of this particular course. Particularly, I want to appreciate our delectable mommy, Professor Orenike Okpong. Thank you for this opportunity to stand in. I don't see this, I don't take this for granted at all. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much, my brother, Dr. Lawal. Yes, we've done quite a lot together. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm very grateful. And good morning, everybody, once again. So basically, today we'll be looking at authorship, publication, and avoiding misconduct. Now, this is one topic that, as we go ahead, is a topic that by the time we are done, many of us will probably go back and say, God, please have mercy on me. I'm sorry. I have done a lot of wrong things. And that's the way it usually is after each lecture like this. And basically, I want to start with a disclaimer here that most of the materials you'll be seeing, of course, I already acknowledged my sources in the bibliography, and they are basically my own concepts, basically, and also some others that I got from other renowned institutions and materials, basically, for this particular training. Now, at the end of this, there are quite a lot of outcomes that have been set for this particular program. And I'm actually trusting that by the time we are done, everybody that is under this call should be able to understand what research misconduct is and the types. We should be able to appreciate the factors that are responsible for research misconduct. Everybody at the end of this particular call should know what qualifies you to be an author for a particular manuscript. And peradventure, you've done otherwise, before now, you will be able to correct and retrace your steps back. Also, we should be able to understand how to prevent research conduct at the end of this particular session. We should understand the concept of conflicts of interest and how to prevent it, and also understand the responsibilities that most of the players in the research process have. That's in terms of publication, the reviewers, editors, and the authors in peer review. And finally, we should be able to know the various ways, because that's what is paramount, that by the time we are done with this session, in our various institutions, in our research, we should be able to promote research integrity, both as an individual and also in our institution at the end of our session today. So basically, I'll be speaking with the outline here. I'm not going to waste time with listing them. So you're going to see a lot of repetition. It's also just to reinforce knowledge in the course of our session today. And it's important to understand what's research misconduct. What exactly is research misconduct? I know that the lecture note has been given to us before now. This probably had the mind that we were going to be having it for the first time today. And that's why you have it this way. But anyhow, we'll still move as we go on. So it's important for us to understand the concept of research misconduct. Now, it's been said that research misconduct actually refers to serious breaches of research integrity. So anything that causes a breach in the integrity of a research. Now, when we talk about the research, we talk about all the stages of the research. Breaches in terms of a collection of data, breach, any form of breach in terms of how you conceptualize the particular research, breaches in terms of how the process, the methodology of the research, breaches in terms of how you communicate the research findings to the scientific community in terms of publication, any form of breach in the research process, called research misconduct. And one thing we must understand, and why it's important that we're looking at this morning, is that whenever there's any form of research misconduct, one thing it does is that it reduces the credibility of science. So by the time you bring out that work, people are questioning the credibility. And whenever people begin to question the credibility of science, then there's a problem there. And that's why we are really looking at this morning. And there's been several attempts to define what research misconduct is, what research integrity is. And you agree with me, many times, many of us see, if we are familiar with the CITI course for research ethics, I'm sure many of us are familiar with that. Now there's a course that is called Responsible Conduct of Biomedical Research. I'm sure most of us at some point or the other in the course of our research work, our research career have done that course. Now, it still refers to research integrity. So it's either you see people say research integrity, in some climes you find people say research, responsible conduct of research. Whichever you refer to, you're actually talking about the same thing. Whether research integrity or responsible conduct of research, we are all referring to exactly the same thing. And there's actually, like you have it on my slide, we really do not have a universally accepted definition. But however, the Office of Science and Technology, the Office of Science and Technology has a policy that defines research misconduct. And it's been accepted by several bodies, several institutions, because it actually captures exactly what research misconduct is. Of course, ORI, the Office of Research Integrity, have a definition, but this actually captures exactly what research misconduct is. And that's what we're going to be basing the session today as on research misconduct based on this definition. And how does it define research misconduct? It has defined it as fabrication, and we're going to look at each of these elements. You see it's repeated in the course of the slide. It has defined it as fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism. Now, in every stage of the research, so fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in proposing, performing, or reviewing research. It also puts the or there, or in reporting research results. So each of these sessions, you see that it captures the entirety of the research process. And that's why a lot of people have adopted this particular definition of misconduct. Now let's look at each of the elements. You find this repeated, and it's going to be repeated for emphasis, and you find it repeated in various forms. Now, what is fabrication? I always look at fabrication from the engineering point of view. So when you want to fabricate an instrument, what it means is that you're making a new instrument. So you want to fabricate an equipment, you want to fabricate a hole, you want to fabricate a machine. What it means is that you want to make that machine. It's not in existence. So when you bring this concept to research, so fabrication means I am making up data, I am making up results. They are not existing, but I am making it up. That is fabrication. Now, falsification, from the word falsify. Falsify means you are manipulating. You are manipulating data. You are manipulating an equipment. So we need to understand, because when we talk about the falsification in research, it's not necessarily that you're falsifying just data. You can't falsify an equipment. For those of us who are doing laboratory-based research, you can recalibrate an equipment probably to favor your finding. That's falsification. Remember, in this case, and in the long run, this will have an effect on the data that particular instrument will produce. Falsification also can mean changing or omitting data. You know, you can omit a data by error. You see, that's where we'll come to issues about honest error and all of that. But intentionally omitting data, that is falsification. And of course, plagiarism has to do with appropriation of another person's idea without giving. The issue is not that you appropriated another person's idea, but the issue is that in the course of the appropriation of either the ideas, their results, or their words, you have not given them appropriate credit. It's fine to, yes, you can pick up an idea from an individual or a person or a person's work, but it is important for you to give them appropriate credit for it. I always see this as the way I describe it to my students. I say plagiarism is like somebody that is copying. You know, when you see in the primary school, sometimes you give students assignments. And when they get to probably over the weekend, they did not do the assignment. And they come to class on Monday. And they say, they just miss, please, can I have your assignment there? And what do? They copy the assignment. And when they copy the assignment, what do? They submit it to the teacher. Now the teacher assessing that assignment sees it as though it's their work. They won't go and say, teacher, this work, I actually copied it from Ade's work. So that is exactly what plagiarism is. And it comes in various forms, which we'll be looking at in this session this morning. Now, there are various, and those are the three concepts. Before we say something is research misconduct, before we say research, there's a misconduct in the research process. There are several flame tests. There are several items that we look out for. And when we find this, we won't say this is honest error. We say this is a research misconduct. Very top on the list is that whenever there's any form of misconduct in research, one thing we must understand is usually intentional. So there's nothing like, I didn't, it was unintentional. I didn't know I was going to do this. Please, I want to ask us, for anybody who is going to falsify data, you can't tell me it was unintentional. It was planned. It was programmed in your mind. You planned it from the start that this was what you were going to do, and that was why you did it. So to say it is research misconduct, it must be intentional. You did it knowingly. And usually it is done recklessly. Another criteria that we look at, and that's why I call the flame test, is that it is usually a departure from the acceptable practices. The acceptable practice is that when you do a particular study, for example, for observational study, you observe an event, and at the end of the day, you write from the findings of your observation. But when you observe an event and you begin to modify your findings, that becomes research misconduct. And of course, for research misconduct, it is usually proven by evidence. We'll see that in the course, as we look at the publication ethics and peer review ethics, we're going to say a bit about that. Of course, I'm not going to bore us with the history, and that's why I took my time to drop a detailed note for us. It didn't start today. Of course, research misconduct had happened before now. We've had several cases of research misconduct before now, and quite a lot of them that is listed on this slide, as you see, and when we go back, we look at them. Gregor Mendel, many of us are quite familiar with this pea plant experiment. Now, shocking for you to notice that there's actually a debate on its findings because people thought that there was some form of selective reporting of the findings of that data. We've had several cases of plagiarism and data manipulation. And this has risen a lot in the court because right now we have what? Peer review. And peer review is now like a searchlight that's going to give us insights into several manipulations that take place in the course of conducting research. What has this also resulted into? Now, journals are beginning to stress the importance of replicability and data transfer. We've all heard about the current concept of open science. So everybody is saying, you have published the data. Please, we want to see it. How did you get this data? I remember in Professor Morenike's last session, Professor Open's last session, she talked about retaining your data. Institution, of course, for 10 years. And why is it important? Because you can't say, you might have published the data maybe 5 years later or 6 years later. A journal can tell you, please, actually, yes, this work was published. Can you share the data with us? You can't say, I actually jettisoned the data. I threw away the data. No, that's not good science. So because of issues about misconduct, it's beginning to, issues about data transparency is coming up. People may say, make your data, let it be open. Show us, how did you get this finding? And if somebody else do the same thing you do, will they get the same result? That's the replicability. Now, what are also the things that are fueling misconduct? Of course, in the mid-20th century, post-World War II, because the government expanded the funding for science in the military, that also increased the pressure to publish. It's just like what we have in our own climate in the low and middle-income countries. Because of the pressure to publish, if you don't publish, you perish. A lot of people want to do research, and they're not ready to go through the right process. We have several scandals. It's not new to many of us. We're going to look at the detail of it. Ghost authorship, honorary authorship. It didn't just start now. It has begun long before now. And this is why a lot of the satellite is coming on misconduct in research. Of course, there are several others. The very popular one, the one stem cell experiment in South Korea, where he faked actually human stem cells just because he wanted to get a finding that was favorable. And we all need to wake up with this. As much as you want to do innovative science, you want to breakthrough sciences, breakthrough our research outcomes, but we must make sure that whatever the research we are conducting it in the manner that it should be conducted. Our personal gain should not override the integrity of our research. And that's something that we must take home from this particular session today. Of course, there is a common issue. You know, how do I put it? Research misconduct now wears new clothes. That's the way I like to put it. Of course, we are quite familiar with the fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. We also have other new dimensions, you know, as we're having paradigm shifts. We're also having various forms that research misconduct is taking. And we're quite familiar with the salami slicing, duplicate sliding, the duplicate for ghostwriting, very common, and manipulation of image. Now, I have the particular first-hand experience with this. Now, for example, you want to do, there's a case report. You actually want to share a particular renowned finder, but you took a photograph. Yes, after you've actually obtained consent from the participants. And by the time you want to publish, you are looking at their photograph and saying, this photograph, if I put this and send this for my manuscript, it might not actually emphasize what I want. And by yourself, you begin to manipulate the image. There are several apps that helps you. Thank God for AI today. You have several apps that will do that for you and enhance the finding. Now, journals are getting smarter. They are also having apps also to detect manipulations in images. So we have to be very careful and be sure that we are doing the right things. Of course, there are various tools that will help you to do this. You have your plagiarism software. Many of us know Turnitin. Authenticate. These are used by several journals. You have also image forensics. That was what I was talking about the earlier time. So that can actually help to identify when an image has been manipulated. We are aware of the retraction watch. I advise us to once in a while just go there and just go through some of the publication from Retraction Watch. It gives you a list of several articles that have been retracted. Several articles that have been retracted. So many times I tell people, it's not about today. You might do something today, you get away with it. But several years, posterity will catch up on you. And what besides such a researcher, and you are asked to, you know, we said you did a work, probably, you did a work 5 years ago. You were a senior lecturer. Now you're a professor. And they call back that work and say, no, we found there was a problem. And the fact is that what happens is that whenever, if your publication appears on Retraction Watch, it has dented your research career. It will dent your research career. So many of us who we have a career in research, I tell people, get to do the right thing from the start and get used to doing the right thing. Get used to doing the right thing. There are some things you will do, people might not know. That's why I like ethics. Ethics is about morals. It's moral principles. It speaks to your conscience, speaks to your heart. You might do something, yes, nobody found out about it, but you know you have done the wrong thing. We'll see the way to handle research misconduct when it does happen. I go back again and talk about this core concept. We'll have in our poll, we'll have a question on that. Fabrication, like I said earlier, I'm reiterating, it involves making up data, all the results. Falsification, you are manipulating. And plagiarism, of course, not far-fetched. You are using another person's idea without giving credit or proper acknowledgement to them. All right, so I won't say much about plagiarism again, but let me just say a few ways that it can present. Remember, we said plagiarism is about you're owning somebody's work without giving due credence or identifying or giving credit to such individual, such work. Now, it can present as the forms of plagiarism. One, it can present as stealing somebody's work or idea. You're stealing a person's work. Now, I've seen a situation where let me share an experience, which I usually share many times I have a class like this. So somehow my spouse, he's an associate professor. So we had, there was a publication. He sent a publication to a particular journal. Please, I'll withhold the particular name for several reasons. So he sent that publication. It was a case report of a particular work he did. He's a surgeon. Now, that work was sent to a journal. But along the line, he found somebody else. So it was just, just you search for several articles and all of that. And he found the work he sent to a journal. That will take us to the plagiarism. We'll see it when we look at peer review ethics. And he found that same work. With another person as author. Now, not from Nigeria, from another country entirely. He looked at it and said, oh, probably is a similar work. But by the time he looked through the entire work, it was exactly the same work that he had sent to a journal. The same work. No change. The only difference was that the name was changed, the institution was changed, the pictures. When you do case report, of course, the pictures were exactly the same that he took in the theater. Stealing somebody's work or idea. It cuts across two different parts. It also cuts on peer review ethics. We are going to look at that as we go ahead. Plagiarism could come as a piece of written work or research idea that somebody has copied and claimed as his or her own. It's not we have claimed it as your own. It could be that you claim a part, or you take credit for a part of a particular person's work without acknowledging them in it, without giving credit. You take it as though it is your own, like the example of the assignment among students that I gave. That is plagiarism. And it comes in various forms. There are several examples. Citation plagiarism. Many of us are guilty of this. We intentionally fail to give credit to a particular work. You are writing your research, you're writing your manuscript. You picked up some work from, but you took it as though it was your statement without giving credit. The ideal thing should be to reference the author from which you got that particular work. And there's one that we call citation amnesia. Amnesia is about forgetfulness. So some people have what we call citation amnesia. Now, not intentional. This particular citation amnesia we are talking about is an intentional amnesia, not the honest. It's an intentional amnesia. And that's what makes it a research misconduct. You also have bibliographic negligence. So where certain references, that happens. Sometimes we have students who will supervise for various works. You're doing the work and you see some references. A particular work is there, but you're not finding it in the reference list. That's bibliographic negligence. And also, it's also a form of plagiarism. Of course, there's also the self-plagiarism. You have multiple publications from the same content. Multiple publications. We also see the way it appears in salami slicing. Suppression of data. Please, I want us to understand that there's no data that is useless. Negative findings are as important as positive findings. So when you find when you get a particular findings from the research that is not probably aligning with the direction that you want your data to align, please publish it. It is important because that might be the answer that the world is waiting for. Please publish it. When you suppress such data, you are also guilty of misconduct. Now, there are things we call questionable research practices. I will before we go to the other part of the session. Questionable research practices. So this, in this sense, they are usually not always classified as misconduct, but they are still unethical. They really do not fall into the core definitions as we will regard misconduct, but they are unethical. Salami slicing. If you look at my slide, you had the chopping board and you had the knife. Those who had gone through the lecture notes, you had the chopping board and the knife. You see it. You have a paper. You say, let me cut it into 3. You fragment your study into several papers. Same publication, I send it to journal A. The same publication, I send to journal B. Duplicate publication. Selective reporting. I decide to select the findings of my research that aligns with what I want. Improper authorship practices. We'll look at it when we look at publication ethics. Failure to disclose conflicts of interest. And of course, poor data management. People look at this and it appears as though when you don't manage your data, you are breaching on the integrity of that data. It's a form of misconduct, but not misconduct itself because it probably do not fit into the definition, the standard, but it is unethical. So when you don't secure data properly, when you don't handle your data properly, you are conducting an unethical process. So salami slicing, many of us are quite familiar with it. Salami slicing is about fragmentation of research. So you can have a researcher split one particular finding from a study into multiple small papers. So each of them is reporting a slice, like a slice of bread. Each paper addresses one. You divide it and you actually publish. That's a form of misconduct. It's wrong. And one thing it does is that it inflates your publication unnecessarily. So it gives a false impression of your number of publications. And this is so common today. Why? Publish or perish has given a lot of credence to people doing this, and it is very, very wrong. You have several examples there. I gave a particular example where you can conduct a large survey. One paper is talking about male correspondence. Another paper, and from the same study, you use another paper and publish on the female correspondence. Another on the age group. One single paper. Please, if we are doing that, I am hoping that at the end of this session, that we'll repent and begin to do the right thing. I already talked about this already. Generally, why do people do it? They want to inflate their publication counts. Of course, career advancement, publish or perish. So if you don't get it, you don't publish, you remain where you are, no promotion. So a lot of people are doing everything as much as possible to see that they get promoted. But you must do it in the right. You must conduct your research in the right and responsible way. And many people do it to get journal visibility. Oh, you see, every time they look at all the works on cancers, you have a lot of publication. But how credible are those publications? It's not about the number, it's about the credibility of your research. Now, I want to look at some misconduct in publication. It comes in various forms. You have deceptive authorship. Deceptive authorship. You submit sections that are listed from other people's work without giving acknowledgement to them. That talks about plagiarism. But if you look at it, it falls under your publication ethics. It could also come as you are resubmitting a previously published data. But when you are resubmitting it, you have modified, you have manipulated, you have re-engineered the work. That somebody that saw your previous work will not know that it's the same thing because it's looking entirely like a new work. But you know that you have manipulated the data. These are misconduct that occur during publication. Lecturers submit papers with figures from students' dissertation without permission. I want to speak on this. Even though you are the lecturer, even though you are the supervisor of this, if you are actually publishing a work from a particular student's dissertation, it is ethical. Let's even remove ethics. It is morally right for you to get the permission of such students. It's morally right for you to get the permission of such students. You don't come and say, I'm the supervisor. Of course, I should be able to say anything I want to. They're my students. They're my students. No, you must get their permission. Or you write your work from the data that a particular student have gotten from his or her work, but you are not citing the students. Or you don't even have the students as co-author. That is wrong. Please, if we are doing that, let's stop it. Let's stop the practice. It's wrong. They may be your student today, but they are not going to continue to become students. And that does not give you the rights as their supervisor or their lecturer. If you use any part of their data, or you actually write your paper from, you should actually acknowledge them as co-authors. And you must get their permission for it. They must give you permission for it. Don't say because you have access to the data, because you are their supervisor and you can use it for whatever you want to. No. The students have that right. You must get their permission. You have deceptive authorship practices, that of course, everywhere. We see it every now and then. Authorship by authority is almost similar to what I've just described, lecturer students. You have the gift authorship. Some we call it guest authorship. You just give a courtesy. It's the professor, very renowned professor. I need to put his name here. When I send his name with this particular manuscript, the manuscript will fly. When they see his name, they'll respect the name. No, it's wrong. Political authorship. You want to be in the good books of your head of department. So you decide to include his name as an author when he does not qualify to be an author. We're going to see the qualification of what makes the person an author. Ghost authorship. The real person who owns the work, the name is missing. The person is a ghost in his publication, in his or her publication. Ghost authorship. I publish a work, but my name is not found listed among the authors. Now, for the authorship criteria, there's a standard. ICMJ has a criteria. on what qualifies the person to be an author. Very important. The person must make substantial contribution to the conception, to the design, to the acquisition of the data, the analysis, interpretation. So you say that the person has a substantial contribution through the various process of the research. The person has contribution in the drafting of the article, in revising it. So you don't just give authorship based on, you are my friend. Oh, you are my, oh, I need, oh, you're actually going for promotion. You don't have enough paper. That's what happened. You're supposed to be qualified to go for professorship. How many papers do you need? You need 2, 3. Okay, I'll give you, I'll just give you 1. You're dashing the papers as gifts. It's wrong. A person must qualify to be an author. And all authors should have participated sufficiently in the work to take responsibility. And I always tell people, authorship is not just by my name appeared on the paper. That's why be careful about places where your name appears, because it's a responsibility. If we include you and note you as an author, you can be called upon anytime regarding issues relating to that paper. So it is a responsibility. Please, moving forward, let's be careful about places where our names appear, because authorship is a call to responsibility. And it's of, I stated it that of note, acquisition of funding, collection of data, it doesn't justify for authorship. Oh, I was the one that provided the funding for the research. No, that does not qualify you to be an author. You were the funder of the study. It does not qualify you to be an author. Oh, I collected the data. I was actually included among the data collectors. No, that does not qualify you for an authorship. We've just said you must make significant contribution to the manuscript. That justifies you as an author. So we're going to discuss this on our chat box. I'm not going to do it here. So I want to quickly I want us to quickly go to peer review ethics as we begin to end. And one we must understand that peer review, so I try to describe it very easily. We all gather to review a particular work. So it's not about that you have reviewed your work, but another eye is like a second eye looking at a particular work. So it's the cornerstone of academic publishing. It's a quality mechanism. It's a quality measure, a quality control measure. I put it as a quality control point for research publication. It ensures that every manuscript that is produced is quality. It ensures that integrity of research is upheld throughout the research process to the point of publication. It acts as a gatekeeper. You know, peer review, what it does is that it also helps to control journal standard. That's why I always tell, allow your work to be peer reviewed. It increases the quality of the work. Of course, it hinges on several principles: confidentiality, objectivity, constructiveness. And peer review must be timely. It must be confidential. I'm not going to say, I explained all of this in the subsequent slide. Confidentiality talks about, so a work has been sent to you for review, a journal sent it to you for review. And the next thing you're discussing the work with your partner. Oh, can you imagine Mr. Alawi in our department? He's doing this kind of work. This data. I wanted to do. You begin to discuss a research work that was shared with you. That negates the principle of peer review. Peer review must be objective, impartial. There must be fairness in peer review. So I'm reviewing your work, not because you are a member of my department, or because you are in my department, I give you a favorable review, even when I'm seeing obvious issues with your work. Oh, you're a member of my community. Oh, you're a member of my clique. You know, we have APC and PDP in institutions. Oh, you're a member of our party in the university. Oh, so every member of our party, when I review, I make sure I give them favor. No, peer review should be objective. You are not interested on who. You are interested in the work, not the person. And it must be constructive. You see, that's where it comes. Have you ever had a kind of review that they sent it back to you and you felt like, who was this person that reviewed this work? You felt so dejected. It must be constructive. So when you send your review, it should be constructive. It should be transparent. If somebody goes through your process of review, nobody should fault it. It should be transparent. And finally, which is the issue, it should be timely. Not you are given a work to review. The work stays for months and the journal keeps begging you. They keep sending you reminders. Then suddenly you find out you're no longer getting any review from that journal. It should be timely. Now, all the players in the publication process have a role to play. The reviewers have their role, the editors have their role. The authors also have their role. For the reviewers, assess your competence. Don't pick a work for review when you don't have. Hello? I hope I'm still heard. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you, ma.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do not accept a work for review when you don't have the competence to assess that work. Don't feel like I want to review. You must have the competence. Where you have identified conflicts of interest with any particular work that's been sent to you for review, please disclose it. It could be conflicts of interest in your relationship with the author, or you actually have a financial conflict of interest, or there's a bias with respect to the institution. Please, it is important to quickly write back to the journal and let them know that you have a conflict, and that particular work will be taken for you and given to somebody else. That is the integrity of research. The editors also have responsibility. The editors are the steward. You know, they are the final decision makers. They made for the publication, but they have a responsibility to be fair, to be impartial. Their decision should be based on validity, not on commerce, because I want to get money from people for publication. No, not about commercializing the particular work, not on political pressure. Somebody is sending note to the journal. You know, you have to make sure you publish that work. No, the editor should be independent, just as the ethics committee is independent. There should be fairness and impartiality in the way you select reviewers. You don't select reviewers that you think will be favorable towards a particular person, or select reviewers who you think are the friends of the person, so that the review will be in the favor of that individual. There should be fairness. And one of the ways to ensure is that you must have policy. Journals should have policy for review. And that policy should be enforced. They must protect the identity of the reviewer. Very important. That's the role of the editor. You don't go and tell somebody, the work comes, don't you know that Professor Adetunji was your reviewer? Then that one begins to take a personal, Professor, I know he doesn't like me. I know, no. There should be confidentiality in the identity of the reviewer. The manuscript details should be guided. I just shared an example of what happened. Of course, we know that happened in the course of the peer review process, because otherwise, why would somebody have had access to another person's manuscript? So these are the kind of issues that take place. Of course, don't ask me what happened. At the end of the day, that work was retracted. That was exactly what the final thing was. Authors also have their responsibilities as well. We see that as an author, you have the responsibility of ensuring that everything that you have submitted, please, you have to, it's not enough to just send your data. Please check it. Be sure you have sent the right data. Submit the right data. Check your findings. I did not say manipulate your findings, because when you are checking your findings, you might find something that is odd. Please present it the way it is. Avoid simultaneous submissions. Duplicate publication. You are sending to the same work to different, please. That is wrong. An author should avoid simultaneous submission of scientific findings. You should keep your data. Keep it, retain your data. The Nigerian data protection regulation talks about 10 years. 10 years, because it could be called up later for examination. I'll quickly look at conflict of interest. Conflict talks about a situation where you have either financial or other personal consideration that might compromise your judgment in designing, conducting, or reporting a research finding. Conflicts of interest. And it is not bad to have conflicts of interest, but the challenge is when you do not disclose it. That's the wrongdoing. When you do not disclose your conflicts of interest. It could come as financial or non-financial. But many times, many of us think that conflict of interest is always about, it's all about financial. No, you could have non-financial. Personal relationships. I could have personal relationship with the particular, like I said earlier, as a reviewer, you should declare your conflict of interest. And how do you manage conflicts when they do occur? The first thing is what? You must disclose. Declare your conflicts. I try to look at, like, we do not have standard definitions as it were in our climb. But of course, in the US, they usually define that you have to disclose when you have significant financial interest. And this is a certain, there's a limit where you have about $5,000 in payments or equity. You can have shares with a particular company, a pharmaceutical company, and you are also a member of the team. And that pharmaceutical company, you are the investigator. You know that you have a shares in that company. There is a tendency that you want to streamline your findings in a way that's actually in favor of the pharmaceutical company. So you need to disclose conflicts where they do occur. Then the second says that there's a need for review and assessment. Ideally, we should have conflicts. I don't know how many of our institutions have conflict of interest committees. That's something that we need to begin to look towards in our setting. Of course, in some institutions, you have conflict of interest committees, and they assess everything related to conflict of interest. But right now, everything is sent to ethics committee, or probably the institution's research management office. There should be a committee that is set up exclusively to review conflicts of interest. And of course, you should be able to manage them. When the conflict of interest do occur, there should be disclosure. Some require public disclosure. Independent review, another body entirely reviews the work. And when you identify such conflicts, you might need to modify your research plan. It could even mean that you recuse. I've had a particular situation where I had to recuse from a meeting. Why? Because I was actually conflicted. I was a member of the team. And of course, I cannot be reviewing a work where I'm also a member of the research team. There's a tendency, I might say I will not do it, but the tendency might be there for you to make sure that everything is going in favor of that particular research. This is why it's very, very important. So where there is a conflict, you need to manage it. The first thing, you must disclose it. Failure to disclose it is the issue. And there are several causes and contributing factors, of course, that makes people want a lot of the misconduct that we see. Why? The publish or perish culture that we have. Is that you publish up? So a lot of people do a lot of things in order to progress in their career. There are several others I've said. A lot of people, we have lack of awareness and training. I used to think that everybody knew a lot about ethics, but in face-to-face interaction, we find out that there is a depth in knowledge. But I thank God for this kind of course, this kind of program that is taking place, because a lot of crop of people are being built right now. A lot of crop of people are getting training in research ethics and integrity. And that's a very beautiful one from the particular team. So there's a need for education, because we discovered that insufficient ethics education, lack of it, is responsible for many of the misconduct that we see. And of course, a lot of people are not even aware of the consequences. There are a lot of consequences for misconduct. It could cause retraction. You can be barred from research completely. Your work can be retracted. It dents your research career. It also arises, misconduct arises, inadequate oversight and supervision. There's no supervision. And really, it's going to help. Our regulatory body, there's quite a lot of challenge from finance, and we're able to conduct monitoring and audits, visits. These are one of the places where we're able to do that. Even also oversights by the various institutions of the research that take place within their community. We also don't have institutional controls. Many institutions don't have policies. No conflict of interest policy, not even research policy. How do we promote this as we end? There's a need for ethics training, just as one that we are having right now. We need regular ethics training. Don't get the training once and stop there. Refresher training. We must commit. We must make commitments. Just like ethics is, it's about morals, principle. Nobody's going to force you. But what you're doing, is it right? So we must commit to integrity from this session today. Begin to practice. Let's have clear guidelines and implementation policies. There should be transparency in promotion. Not just about, people are beginning to say, is it about the number of papers that you have or the quality of the paper that you have? Researchers should begin to be held accountable for their research. I'm sure that from what we have seen today, many of us probably are going back with and telling ourselves, I think I need to improve. If you're not having that feeling, then probably we've not done enough justice. But usually this is the feeling at the end of a class like this, that we're saying we want to do things better. So I want to acknowledge the U.S. Office of Research Integrity, where I got some of my materials from, the U.S. Public Responsibility in Medicine and Research, U.S. Primer, the Center for Bioethics and Research, Ibadan, where I'm an alumni and the URA Specialist Teaching Hospital Research Ethics Committee. And these are the sources of some of the data that I got for this particular lecture notes. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. So we'll go over to the question. I hand over to Dr. Kudus from here.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Usually research integrity lectures are usually like sermons where everybody picks something from it and you go back home to go and reflect. Once again, thank you for that beautiful presentation and sensitization to all researchers on the call. I'm sure are all better for this session. So we have a couple of questions we are going to be taking, and I'll do it quickly. And if you can answer it in brief, it will be helpful. So the first one I'm taking here is, good morning, Ma. I'd like to ask if it's possible to independently develop an idea that has already been worked on by someone else, thereby unintentionally making it seem like plagiarism. In such a case, what would be the appropriate course of action?
Okay. All right. So do I take this one at a time? Or
Yeah, I think you should take it.
Okay, all right. So fine. All right. So it's possible that you actually independently develop an idea and you later get to find out that same idea, somebody else, and someone looking at it looks at it and go, oh, somebody plagiarized the other here. This is someone's work. You must have evidence. You've not done anything wrong if you are really sure that you independently developed that idea. So what you do is they bring in your evidence. So you must have enough justification and evidence to prove that particular work is yours. So you probably have your data where you collected, you have various, and that's why you see when they talk about tracking of your data, you have that evidence. You can actually present it that this is your idea. But where the problem is, you see in this particular issue now, where the problem is where you cannot prove. You can't just tell somebody, oh, it's my idea. Where is the evidence? So I don't have it. No, we'll say you actually, no, this is not your work, you plagiarized. So that will be the way out of that. Okay,
thank you very much. The next question I have there is asking, just a minute. Toby, can you help me? I can't seem to see the next question. Oh, I've seen it, thanks. What do we assess as competency in review? I don't know if you get the question.
All right. Competency in review. It means that what? You have the relevant education, training, and experience to review that work. I cannot be in O&G, for example, and you send me a work, probably in ENT. I'm not competent to make that review. Well, I don't have the necessary exposure, the experience. I don't have the training, so I can't review the work. But many of us who have been, if you have been a reviewer, you know that there are times some journals will mistakenly send it and they are saying, oh, sorry, it was a mistake and all of that. No, you don't have the necessary education. You don't have the experience. It's not even enough. You might even have the education, but you don't have the experience to review that work. And you must declare it to the journal. Oh, I'm sorry I received the work, but I don't think. You said that's the intent. It's about, you are owning up to it. Many people will not. They'll just carry the work and review it anyhow and send it. No. I'm sorry, I really don't have the experience to review this work. I would appreciate if it could probably be reassigned to someone else. That's the openness. So that's the thing to do.
All right,
so it talks about the education, the training, and experience.
Thank you with that one. The next question reads, if peer review is meant to detect research misconduct, why do you have so many cases of FFP coming to light after publication?
Now, you see, that goes back to our responsibilities. So if a reviewer do not properly review a work that is sent him or her for peer review, we will continue to have the same situations that we have. So it all boils down to the various players in the publication process, the editors, the reviewers, and the author themselves. It all boils down. If everybody do their responsibility, if everybody carry out their work the way they should, in a responsible manner, it won't happen. But as I speak, we only continue to plead to people's conscience. Even the editor, there's little that the editor can do. Of course, we've had several softwares, apps that helps to detect one or two things. Of course, but there's more little that they can do. It falls back on us. Let's speak to our reasoning, asking yourself, this particular work I've given to me, is this the right? So am I reviewing it the way I should? You're conflicted, you're not opening up. Is this the right thing to do? So it boils back to us as individuals. So that's the more I will say with respect to that.
All right. So thank you very much. The next question is asking that must all conflict of interest be declared, and are there works where it could be resolved?
Okay.
I'm taking this from the YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. So for conflict of interest, it should be declared. So that if you look at when I started, that was the first process. When you have conflict of interest, before you start determining who do I do, what do I do, where do I, the first thing is what? You must declare your conflict of interest. I am conflicted, I have a conflict of interest in this particular work. If you look at even on the ethics committee, members of the ethics committee, sometimes you have conflict of interest with respect to several research work. You must declare it. You don't just say I have conflict of interest. In what? Oh, the author is my husband. Oh, the author is a member of my department. You understand? Also, you understand? So the author, I have a share in the company. Oh, I'm declaring my conflict. You must declare it. Then after you have declared the conflict, you now start the process of the management of the conflict. So you must declare before you manage the conflict. So there are various processes. The management could be that, oh, in the course of reviewing this work, you recuse. Oh, you already tell if it's in at the point of publication, you write to editor, oh, I'm sorry, I really cannot, I am actually conflicted because I am this, and that. So you must disclose it. It's important. You don't hide conflict of interest and say, I have conflict of interest and I keep it to myself. No, you must disclose. That's the first point before you manage the conflict of interest.
Thank you very much. Someone is asking that does early response, that response within 5 to 10 days or a month, does it necessarily make a journal predatory?
I didn't get it.
Okay, acceptance of a journal publication within 10 days to a month, I mean, early response, does it necessarily make a journal a predatory journal?
Not necessarily. There's a list of predatory journals. That's not the criteria. You can there are some very efficient journals. They are very efficient journals. And the fact is that many of these predatory journals, of course, many of them are not indexed in the computer databases that we have. I know I can't remember the name. If you will probably remind. There's a name. You have the name.
There's list.
Yes, you have the list exactly. So you have the list, that list of predatory journals there. The criteria is not just because they respond early, but it's very common with predatory journals, of course. Many of them, you see, they just keep telling you, bring your research work, this, that. And before you know exactly, they reviewed it and they published. But you also have very efficient journals that also review very fast and they are not predatory journals.
Okay, ma. What can we do in a situation where the editor demanded to pay the APC by the authors before sending the reviewers' comment to the authors? Is this the right practice?
Sorry, please, can you read? Okay, I don't know if I'm...
Someone is asking, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Someone is asking that if the editor requests for APC, active processing charges, before sending reviewers' comment to authors, is that a right practice and what should be done?
Well, what you need to find out, what's the journal policy? I can't tell you whether it is right or wrong. If the journal policy says that, oh, you have to send your APC before it is sent to, so you have to abide by the journal policy.
Yeah. So that's quite unusual.
Yes, that's very, very unusual because it also has the way of, influencing in some manner, but it's wrong. But I also go back to what you can do in that case will probably be to challenge. So you probably write back to them and let them know that. But then I think they tell you, oh, this is our... So that's always say, before you actually send your work to any journal, please take your time to look through how the journal operates. What if they have written policy? Please look through and read through and understand their written policy. You actually have some journals that have policies that are unethical. So what do? You quickly exempt yourself from such places. So that would be my answer. That would be my take.
Thank you very much. I think there are some interesting questions on salami slicing.
Okay.
In the case of salami slicing, is breaking down a comprehensive thesis into different papers applicable? And somebody also make reference to the fact that breaking a PhD thesis into 2 or 3 publishable papers is not salami slicing. So I'm sure they want your take on that.
Okay. Now the issue, because this salami, a lot of people are victims of it. Now, when you do salami slicing, what many people do, they break it. They don't refer to the initial paper. So you can't have a particular work that has been broken into maybe 3 particular papers, a particular dissertation. Now, each dissertation is taken as a different work, If for any reason you get to break, you must refer that a part of this work, I think there was a time I had a particular and I gave some examples, has been published in this with reference. A part, if you have that break, you break the work like that, a part of this work has already been published, and give us the reference for it and where we can find that particular work. So that would be the way to handle this particular scenario that's been painted.
Yes, the questions keep coming. It means people are really engaged. So
yes,
we have 5 minutes and I have more than 10 questions. So let's see how many we can take. Okay. This one is asking, should it be 1 paper per journal, or you can publish 1 paper in multiple journals?
Remember what we talked about duplicate publication? Please, it's unethical. We don't accept it. It's wrong. It's wrong. I talked about, it was one of the examples we gave. That's duplicate publication.
If a study was conducted using mixed methods, can we publish the different methods separately as qualitative and the other quantitative in different journals without being flagged as malpractice?
You know, that's what are you? It's the same salami slicing. Yeah. So you are doing that. Is like the example I gave. You publish a particular survey. Now you decide to take the male correspondent and publish the work on male correspondence. You take another work, publish on female correspondence. You do another one, publish on the age group. It's similar. You have mixed study. Probably you use them, let me see, cross-sectional and maybe another qualitative part. You decide to, let me just publish the cross-sectional part. Another one again, another paper again, let me publish the qualitative component. No, it's the same thing. It's wrong.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So somebody asked that blind review, how well is it helping to curb how well is it helping to curb bias?
Okay. Well, that is an operational point of view. Probably something that we need to research on. You need to send to journals to help us assess, because you cannot just use the statement from me to determine how, because I'm not allowed to assess for various journals. So maybe somebody probably will pick that up as a research interest to see and discuss with journal editors how much that is actually. But ideally, it should. The essence is that it should help to curb bias. Because if I'm blinded, I don't know what belongs to A, I don't know who is who. But somehow we discover that in the course of a review, in some very wrong journals, those blindings are broken. Those blinds are broken. I should have had a session where somebody called. I know one of my senior colleague was telling me, and called and said, you were the one, the person was quarreling with that particular senior colleague. You were the one that reviewed my work. Oh, so that statement, you were the one, and the personal beef. And this was like, how did you? Of course, it was unblinded by probably the journal, probably by the journal editor. So ideally, in the standard situation, blinding should actually help to curb that. But the question still remains, how much does that? I cannot say particularly, because I cannot stand with my statement for several journals. So it will be something that we might want to actually do as a research and actually get that significant finding on how much it does curb.
Let me take this question, then probably take the others to the chat box. Okay. So someone is asking, they submitted a manuscript and there was no acknowledgement of the submission, and subsequently the site is not accessible anymore. A complaint was sent and there was no response. What should they do? Can they go ahead to submit to another journal?
So that's where the issue of sorry, I want to use the colloquial word. You have entered one chance. You know, that's the challenge. When you have sent your work to a particular journal, all of us who have been published, you know that you cannot decide just to, I will move it to another journal. You must have had the reasons beyond reasonable doubt that this particular journal is not reviewing my work. You've made effort. It's not a one-time thing. I just said, I didn't get, and I stopped there. Then I just picked my work and sent to another journal. You must have every reason beyond every reason that this journal is not, despite there was no acknowledgement. And I'm sorry to say that's quite very common with some of the journals we have around locally. You send journals, sometimes you find some of them, no acknowledgement. Of course, for very Q1 journals, that won't happen. That's why we always encourage people, please, as much as possible, let's see that we publish our work in Q1 journals. Yes, it does happen, but you must have every reason before you can, justifiable reason. Otherwise, you can't just move and say, oh, it was not reviewed, I want to take it to another. Because when you already submit your work to a particular journal, you're already binding. But of course, there are times where there are journals that tell you, of course, very, very high, they tell you that, so we are sorry, this work, we can't review it. You can move your work and take to another and send it to another journal for review. But when it's already stuck in a particular journal, you must have a strong justifiable reason before you can move it. You've sent several, sent reminders, and you have that as an evidence. Please, I always tell people, please keep your evidence. So that tomorrow, for any reason, if this comes up, you can show that as an evidence. So you can actually move it at that point. But you must have a justifiable reason. You must have done your best to reach out to them severally without response for you to be able to take that action.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's top of the hour, and we have to just call it off at this point. We'll leave the link open for a while so that Dr. Weteri can possibly answer the last two questions on the chat box, or possibly answer it on the WhatsApp group. With that, I think we have all been educated and enlightened by Dr. Weteri, who is passionate about this area of research. She's so passionate about it, and wherever you see her speak about it, you will indeed be amazed about the depth of knowledge she has in it. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We'll continue the conversation on the chat box, and do have a lovely weekend. Please, later today, we'll be having a session, the Manuscript Writing Hub webinar series. I'm sure the link will be on the chat box already. If not, I'll drop it before the end of before we close the page. Join us 4 p.m. today, where we'll be taking the discussion that is actually related to what we discussed today, which is about how to start writing process. How do you address the proverbial white slate? How do you make the first push to your publication process? We look forward to having everyone on that call. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.